All right, welcome back to another episode of Lila's Herbal Revolution. Today I am joined by Forager Moe from, you're in the southeast part of the country, right?
Charleston, South Carolina.
I like how right when we start recording, the train goes by again, so bear with me. Moe is a forager, and you have a little bit of a dabbling in herbalism, I believe, and mushroom foraging. So we're going to talk about kind of all of those worlds, but as you know, the shtick is bring on guest. Mo did an experiment for me, as I did the experiment too, and we both did a therapeutic dose of Albizia or mimosa bark for a week. And normally, when I have guests do an herb, I'll tell them where to buy it, or I'll send it to them, and we figure that out. And you tried to forage it. Which I thought was really cool. And I didn't even realize that Albizia grew in America. That was news to me.
Yeah, Albizia's got a couple different species. One is highly sought after for medicinal properties. The other one was for its aesthetic beauty, and that's the one that grows here in the U.S. The pink, the Persian silk tree, I believe they call it. Yeah, it grows
Well,
all over here.
when I think we talked about you would try the one I recommended from a reliable Chinese medicine supplier, but maybe in the future you sample some local mimosa bark and compare and contrast.
Yeah, that place was actually from Virginia, so south enough for me.
Perfect. Well, we touched on it a little bit before we started recording, but I want to hear a little bit more about your experience with the Albizia and taking it as a tea and all of the good stuff. And I can share a little bit about my experience because it's something I regularly go on and off of. It's one of my favorite herbs. My mom calls it the crying herb because it makes her cry, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about why. But tell me a little bit about your experience with it.
So right after you and I started talking about that, a local herbalist here had a mimosa tea ceremony. I was like, okay, let's do that. And she made the tea from the flowers, and it tasted like a cucumber kind of drink. So that was pretty neat. And then she made a tincture out of it. She used glycerin, so it kind of came through sweet, and that was pretty cool. But then the bark is totally different flavor wise than the flowers. And I was a little apprehensive at first about, boiling a bunch of tree bark and, just having some weird earthy taste. But surprisingly, it tastes just like tea, which, tea is just leaves anyway. I probably shouldn't say that in front of like a tea aficionado, but yeah. And yeah, surprisingly, there wasn't anything like weird about it. I know I've heard you talk about doing therapeutic doses and you got to like muscle it down. No,
Huh?
it's like here in the South, the town that I live in, the claim to fame is we invented iced tea, like sweet tea,
Mm-hmm.
and locally we have a tea plantation from Bigelow Tea, and yeah, so tea is all around me. Yeah, it was good as
Okay,
far
I want to ask
as.
some
Oh,
questions before you
oh,
jump
sorry.
in. No, you're okay. That's cool that this was a new experience of taking the bark and decocting it and drinking it, because I know the feeling you're talking about. Like, it's a little like, should I be doing this? This is weird. Like, this seems, primitive, and like, is it dangerous? Like, I felt that way when I started to really get into using plants, and it's an interesting experience. Like you said, boil tree bark and drink it. Albizia is definitely lighter tasting than a lot of herbs. Like, I think it has a nice flavor. It's a little astringent, but I think as far as like good tasting herbs go, it's on the better end. But I'm curious about your experience with the flowers. So as you are about to, I think, tell us how the Albizia went, I also want you to compare it and tell me if you felt something different or similar with the flowers, because I don't use the flowers in practice. I only use the bark.
The flower, I mean, the tea was already made. It was like light and refreshing, and we sat in circle, and I'm not like a spiritual person, but I went for the plants, and the what's the word about the ritual that went on. I was respectful, participated. It was me and I don't know, it was probably about a dozen women, and that's
Sounds about
usually
right.
what shows up at these things. Yeah, I mean, I like women, but it does feel a little weird, especially I'm a dude. Like I like being outside. That's there's a lot of guys that like being outside, but
This was out of your
learning
comfort zone
about
is what I'm hearing.
yeah. I mean, who I was with, I was fine. But yeah, yeah, you're right. Not very comfortable for me. But right before I went, you were talking about it being the crying herb for your mom. Three women in the group were talking about crying when you take a sip and think about it and reflect. And I was like, I'm looking around. There's nobody to look at because you're the only person I know. And they're talking about this. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, I mean, as a guy, and we talk about mental health and stuff like that, guys don't share feelings like that, and it's just weird to be like in that circle for me and doing it. But it was cool to see that.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I want to hear, did you cry on the Albizia? Because it makes me cry too sometimes.
No, I did not cry. I
Dang
I
it.
didn't get any of that. I just got like I normally I would take it in the evening just to like relax. And that would be like with any cup of tea for me. But one day I took it in the morning and we went somewhere and I was just tired all morning and I was like, that could be it. But yeah, a lot of herbalism for me, from my experience since I'm kind of solo, is like a lot of skepticism with like placebo effect and all that. And I've had experience with some plants that like it worked, and I was like, okay. And I'm not poo-pooing the idea or saying it's woo-woo, but I do believe that people put a lot of emphasis on believing that it's going to work, which probably gets them across the finish line, but I'm not sure it's carrying the whole thing.
Okay, I have some thoughts on that. As an herbalist, and the placebo effect is very much real. It accounts for over 30% of healing, not just in natural spaces, but in conventional spaces as well. The placebo effect is a big driver, as is the nocebo effect. So if you were sitting there taking this like, it's not going to work, it's not going to work, you might have colored your result. But what I will say is, I have an ethical standard that I don't charge for placebo. So the things that I do and recommend with plants have physiological effects in people. Now, that doesn't mean that every herb is right for every person. That doesn't mean that everybody feels every herb or every, pairing is a slam dunk. But I very much understand and respect the skepticism, especially with how much just bad information and what you're out there seeing on social media and the internet. And, I'm hearing, about your tea ceremony, and I'm wondering like how much flour was in there. It probably wasn't a therapeutic dose. And then you're trying to tincture a very light, mild flour. Like, I'm sitting there being skeptical as well, just as I hear how other people practice. But it's a big part of my practice, like specifically just something I'm very conscientious and aware of is placebos. It exists. I won't charge to do things that are placebo effect. That doesn't mean it's not there. That doesn't mean that people don't have a belief in me or their protocols, and that, shifts things. But there are, I can give somebody an herb and they start urinating more. Like we have a diuretic effect, So there's
Yeah.
layers to this conversation, but I appreciate the honesty and the skepticism. If it made you tired that morning, though, it did something.
Yeah, it did something. To go one step further, a lot of plants, even though we can find them out in the wild, depending on the time of year, some of them will carry the medicine, won't carry it in their roots, carry it in their leaves, carry it in the bark. I mean, my best example is tree work, not taking the tree, just like the time to cut and prune trees is in the winter. Because if you try to cut a tree in the summer or, when it's actively growing, it's going to get full of sap and sticky and it's just going to be a mess. In the winter, it just cuts and, you're done. But I hear like a lot of roots, like root plants or root medicine. It depends on the time of year, which, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, well, that's 100% a piece of the puzzle. And like, if you were to forage Albizia bark, like you said, it's ornamental where you live. It's not necessarily medicinal. And I think this is a big problem in the herbal space is people grow their own herbs or they forage and they don't have the knowledge, or They don't pay attention to where they're sourcing from. Like, I would never source ashwagandha that's grown stateside. Those aren't the right conditions to grow ashwagandha. And when you grow these medicinal plants outside of their natural habitats, you don't know that what you're growing is medicinal. It might be big, it might have a high yield, it might look nice, but that doesn't mean it's medicinal. Like, the medicinal properties come from plants growing under certain conditions. And if we remove the plant from those conditions, then we don't know. So that's all part of the puzzle of herbalism, and it's one reason I am skeptical of most herbalism and most medicines that herbalists make.
Yeah, I mean that and our food supply. You know, uh, the farms that they grow on, the dirt is just pumped full of, I'll just say amendments, not chemicals, but and a lot of like what Western medicine is the removal of the whole plant to isolate whatever it is they're looking for. So you don't get that synergistic effect of all of it working for you. Or, they talk about certain medicines have an entourage effect where there's multiple things on
Yes.
top of the main one. And yeah, like, I mean, as far as consciousness, there is so much that we don't know more than what we'll ever know.
100%. Well, and that's why, so my training comes from the three big herbal systems: Western herbalism, Ayurveda, and traditional Chinese medicine. Western herbalism is without a doubt my weakest arm because the knowledge isn't there. We haven't used these plants for thousands of years. We haven't perfected their growing conditions. We haven't perfected how to cultivate them. We haven't, really like figured out the energetics on a lot of them. I find dosing Western herbs to be way more challenging. But when I go back to Ayurveda, like, I know what's been done for 5,000 plus years. It's got well documented history. Like, I have a whole system this herb exists in that doesn't exist in Western herbalism. And I feel like there's like a huge gap for me. And like, as you said, there's so many things we don't know. Like, I feel like we know the least about Western herbalism. And so I heavily rely on the more ancient stuff. And the people I work with, like, we get results, and I work with what I'm confident with. And the Western stuff, I just don't feel as confident with.
Well, on the Western side, we kicked out all the practitioners, took their
Oh, yeah.
land, sent them out west. Yeah, I mean,
Dark Ages. We had a Dark Ages here, and we haven't caught up yet.
yeah, I mean, our Western herbalism went to laboratories and, institutions.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Well, and it's interesting because it was completely wiped out here in America, but in other countries in Europe, like in Germany, herbalism continued to evolve alongside Western medicine. So it's a little bit more integrated there, but it's still under like the Western mindset of how we study and interact with these herbs and isolate these herbs and extract these herbs. It still doesn't fall into the fully fleshed out system that I think really sets Eastern medicine apart. But it's just America's behind in a lot of things, in a lot of
Well,
ways,
yeah, I mean,
but
look at
especially
our
in
society.
our supplies. Yeah. That's a rabbit hole for a for another for another day.
Yeah, yeah, I was worried about having enough to talk about. Now it's like,
No.
can we contain this?
No, we can contain it. So when I take the mimosa bark, well, and it's funny because I just like brewed up a batch and, would just pour a portion of my batch and drink it every day. And I forgot that I was drinking it. Like, I was just doing it, chugging it down and going about my stuff. And then like 2 nights in after taking it, like, I realized my brain was like processing a bunch of information. I felt like things that had been like stuck were moving through. And I was like, what's going on? Like, why am I getting this? Like, my cache is clearing. And then I realized I was taking the Albizia. And, a couple days in, it gives me that like just process and move things through feeling, which is really hard to put words to. And then you just feel lighter because you're not holding on to so much. And I think that's where the herb is really cool because it's, claim to fame is processing grief. But I think we have to process all our emotions. And to me, Albizia helps us do that.
Yeah, emotions.
Emotions. Those darn emotions. But it's interesting because, like you said, you're a man, you're a little less in touch with your emotions. Like, I wonder if you need to go a little, like, a few layers deeper, because my emotions are surface. Like, I don't hide them. I lean into them, all those things. So I find this herb works really well for me. But maybe if you're more locked up, it takes longer to work, you need more, like there could be a factor there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much we don't know about stuff. And, part of being a man, sometimes you get set in your ways, but as I'm getting older, you kind of just have to try something different. And, you and I have talked about it. I did ketamine therapy as far as like layering emotional, like that. You can do all the research you want until you actually do it and see where it takes you. It's not for everyone, but if you're open to it, it can really help you out physically, mentally. I mean, we're doing the Albizia during May and June or mental health month and men's mental health month.
Sorry everybody, we had some technical difficulties. So we're talking about mental health month and I think kind of the comparison between how men process emotions and women process emotions. And Mo, you were telling us about ketamine therapy and how that seemed to be pretty effective for you. It's something also sounding like it was a bit out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it was like you have to, kind of trust where you're going. I went to a psychiatrist that provided all of the therapist, the medicine, everything in that kind of setting. There's clinics out there and you just go in, get the shot or the spray or whatever, and you just sit there. And I'm like, well, what good is that? But yeah, to be able to have a therapist there with me was like, I would have never arrived at some of the stuff on my own ever. And that was like real eye opening. That's where I learned the word arrested development. Man,
Mm.
that's a hard pill to swallow. But I mean, when you're like genuinely trying to be your best self and like whatever you've been doing, 'cause I'm almost 50, but whatever you've been doing for almost 50 years that's gotten you here and you just kind of feel like you're stuck, you kind of have to be like, let's try something new. And with this psychedelic renaissance that's going on now, I do believe like novel ways of thinking and treating these issues are needed because, I mean, I would consider myself treatment resistant as
Mm.
far as depression. I've tried numerous medications on that end. And like even going through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, like you realize like you're not dying, nothing horrible is happening to you, but you're still sitting in there with those feelings. But you take those medicines and the feelings kind of go away, but then you can't think, you can't pay attention, you put on weight, you're impotent or whatever. And, it's like, do I want to just feel like crap or do I want to not feel half my body for whatever? So
Like,
yeah,
yeah, those aren't two options. Those are like, that's like, do you want to survive this way or do you want to survive this way? But that's definitely like not living your best life options.
right. And yeah, and then, during psychedelic talk, ketamine comes in that conversation with neuroplasticity and all that. And yeah, that's kind of what you're going for is like a physical change in your brain wiring. That's what you're hoping at least. You don't feel it or anything. You might kind of wake up and feel different, but you and I were talking about psychedelics and them being moved to a clinical setting, laboratory clinical setting, that kind, and removing all the woo. You kind of need that woo to like shake you to your core so like something happened and it'll wake you up.
Such an interesting way to put it. Like you need the woo because someone like you who's more analytical, like you said, you're a math and science guy. Like the woo is probably out of your purview. Like you probably, don't you said you don't consider yourself spiritual. You probably don't consider yourself woo woo, but if you're trying to fix something, you're trying to fix that habitual patterning, you need something to disrupt it or something to interrupt it. And I think that's what psychedelics do as a tool is they interrupt and they show us another way or something is possible. And what's cool about your ketamine experience is because I actually find it's a little parallel to how I experience Albizia. it lets me process things from a distance so they don't sting so much as they're coming up. And I remember like the very first time I took it, I was driving and going through some big life changes, and all of a sudden I'm in tears. I'm like just the floodgates are open, but it wasn't like a super painful, it wasn't like distress, it wasn't like, I'm at rock bottom crying or emotions. It was like, it just felt like processing or like things coming up so I could acknowledge them and then they could move through. And I'm curious with the ketamine, because I know you touched on in the chunk that the recording was not there. You've had a lot of loss, and without, processing and loss, like that's a lot of grief. And mimosa bark really helps to move grief through. And it sounds like, is that what ketamine did for you? Like, did it help you process and move that grief through? And did you find happiness or any like lighter emotions at the other side of it?
The very first session, I'll just, tell you my experience that like a lot of people wonder like what is it like? You go under, you get your shot. Well, I got a shot, not the spray, but you go in there and he gives you the shot. You're like, I'm in a zero gravity chair and all that. And then you just kind of, lay back and relax, and then you just kind of feel like you're floating, and then you're stuck in your head. And for me, it was like being able to dissociate, the mind and the body just for that, it was like an hour. My body felt good, and then my mind was like in like its own like mental workshop. Like I could be in there and think, and if I was working on something or whatever, like, I'm a visual person like that. But then all of a sudden, like you're going through and they're playing binaural beats, and it's like background music, but it kind of pushes the gondola along down the river, and like stuff will come up. And at the end of that first session, I had this weird, like, I was floating in outer space and the whole world was in front of me. And it felt like whole world had a loss, like a grieving loss. And then the tears started rolling down, and, I got out of it and I'm like, what is going on? And, I'm talking with the therapist, and she's like, yeah, you've suffered a lot of loss. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't feel at that time that loss that I saw slash felt in the session was mine. It felt like the whole world, your loss, your mom's loss, your neighbor's loss, like anybody who ever lost anything. I told her, I was like, this doesn't feel like it's for me. And then that's kind of where like it opened my eye to like, yeah, it's about you, but like things are weird and you kind of have to like decode it.
Yeah. You're not spiritual, but do you believe we are all interconnected?
In one of my sessions, I was in there and I was thinking like, can I talk to other people? It was like a weird, novel thought, but I do believe there's something, look, I'm a math and science guy, and chemistry and atoms and all that, like there's something there, but we just don't know how to manipulate it to like the fullest.
That's interesting, because maybe the goal isn't to manipulate it. Maybe the goal is just to let it be and stop trying to control everything like us humans like to do.
Right, right, yeah. But I mean, chemistry is neat and what we can do with it. But yeah, like consciousness is like we'll do another podcast with that. Yeah, Asheville, North Carolina is like a hotspot right now for that. And I went in on bicycle day actually. We're talking about ketamine therapy, and bicycle day is April 19th. April 18th, which is also my daughter's birthday, is when Brian Hubbard was at the White House working on the Ibogaine and psychedelic prohibition ending. And so now that they've got that ball rolling, that'll hopefully get a lot of people help. One of the main things for me with that, and I mean, I don't have any addictions or anything, but the Ibogaine helps a lot of people with PTSD. They talk about, our military guys. My brother, I said I lost a younger brother. It was in Iraq in 2007. And like, I kind of wonder like, if that was available to him, if that might have helped him out. And yeah, it wasn't a combat related thing. It was, talk about mental health and being able to, for, men to talk about it. Also, my brother committed suicide. That is a hard thing to relay out in the open. It's almost 20 years now, but, still like, you don't know who wants to hear it or anything, but since we're talking about mental health and yeah, that's, not proud of it, but it's something that's part of me. And I'm sure, there's a lot of other people that have experienced it also, but don't say anything about it.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's gonna hear that and relate to it. And couple things came up while you were talking. I'm thinking about your experience on the ketamine and you feeling the world's grief, because I think this interesting thing happens where our microcosm kind of mirrors the macrocosm. And so I'm wondering if that was a mirror for you, or, like what's going on in your world is what's going on in the greater world in a really weird, interconnected way, if you believe it. So I just that thought came up for me. And I'm also curious, if do you think you'd be here talking about the grief and your experiences and your brother if it weren't for the ketamine therapy?
Probably not, because, nothing would have happened to me that would make me more open. Like the ketamine really like showed me that, whatever you're thinking up here, it doesn't care. It like when in psychedelic talk, I guess, the medicine will show you the way. That's literally what it did. When you see this online or, in social media, people talking about psychedelics and setting and intention and all that, like 75% of it, like I'll buy. But yeah, there's no controlling it. There's no like, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna, think about my girlfriend that I just broke up with and it's gonna work itself out. No, you might be thinking about your grandmother from, who died when you were 8 and all those memories and how you miss her and all that. That's like some unprocessed grief that, we all have something like that.
100%. And it's interesting because like after you had that experience and it sounds like you didn't realize everything that you were carrying. And I think that I'm gonna try to say this tenderly, but we're not always aware of what's running in the background and that's influencing our behavior. So you talked about like the neuroplasticity and stuff. Like once that stuff comes to our awareness, we can kind of work through it and see how it's, impacting our ability to show up and interact with the world in a certain way, which I think is really interesting because it's like we have to bring these things out and forward, which again, I think this is really thematic with the Albizzia. Like we have to process them and move them through, or they're going to keep controlling us in a way that we don't really see because it's happening in the background.
Yeah, if you don't deal with it, it's not going to change.
Yeah.
You're not just going to wake up one day and be like, it's better now,
Right.
you
Something
know?
has to give, something has to change. We have to do something a different way.
Then the other thing is like you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Like it doesn't matter whether it's you're talking about your feelings or problem at work or something you're trying to figure out. It's hard to like know what you're looking for sometimes. And yeah, the plants will do that to you. I mean, even if you have like an allergic reaction to a plant, like, some people are allergic to whatever.
Hmm.
You'll know it'll make you feel weird. You get that anxious feeling. You might think you're dying, or you get some weird rash or something. Yeah, I mean, it'll shift your consciousness a little. But when you're talking about like, mental health and just wanting to be happy or normal or better or, stuff like that, yeah, you kind of have to be willing to try something new. And right now, like a great time for a lot of people to try new things.
100%. And like I'll tell you, my favorite type of person I work with is someone who's just open to anything, because it's an interesting experience with herbalism and the way I work or people like me work. And part of the medicine is taking the medicine. Like not even what the medicine's going to do, but like part of the medicine is like, okay, I know Albizia didn't give you the same effects it gives me, but you got to have a new experience that expanded your purview in a way just by taking the bark and decocting in a way that you've never done before. Like that
Right.
in itself is shifting habits and patterns and our way of thinking because it's different, which I think is really cool. Like when I tell people like you're going to put ghee in your eyes, or you're going to do an enema with this herb, or you're gonna, start taking this powder. Like, some stuff I do is really weird. Some stuff's not as weird. So, don't be scared, people. But like part of the medicine is that if you keep doing the things that you've been doing, you're not going to feel better or different because you're just in the same cycle. You have to go outside your purview or you're not going to change.
Right.
And the other interesting thing I'm going to circle back to, are want to control things. Because I think a lot of us on a healing journey, whether it's mental health, I have my own history with mental health issues, or if it's, you know, physical health or weight or whatever it is, like we as humans try so hard to control things. And what I love about the psychedelics and the plant medicine, like you said, is it's an experience you can't control. You have to surrender to. And I actually think we need a lot more of that surrender in life, and we'll be a lot more happy. We'll be a lot more go with the flow if we stop trying to just control everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're just trying to keep order in your life because nobody wants a messy life.
Yeah,
And
true.
yeah, I mean, usually those people are fun, but
Yeah, fun for a night. That's
yeah,
not.
exactly. But yeah, I mean, you kind of want a balanced life. And the weird thing is like when it becomes unbalanced and you don't know it, that's where like all the anxiety and the questioning and, I see a lot of people like, why can't anything go right in my life or why can't I do anything right? Like it's terrible out there. I mean, our whole society, like it's a mess.
This is something I personally struggle with because, yes, it's a mess. And the world of herbalism is a mess, and social media is a mess. And it's like this weird dichotomy of you have to acknowledge what a mess it is, but I also think part of our work is not to let that mess bring us down, and to hold the perspective and focus on like I don't want to say like put your head in the sand, but like cut out what you can't control because it's just going to bring you down.
Right.
Like I do not watch
Um,
the news.
I don't watch. I'll say I don't watch TV. I mean, we've got Netflix and all that, but like the news or whatever's on TV with the commercials and all, I haven't done that in a couple of years, and it just sounds not pretentious, but yeah, I just kind of gave up on it. Like especially with all the politics and everything in the last 12 years, it's just like I don't want to deal with it. But we talk about connecting with nature, and you are a self-described armchair herbalist,
I actually don't like
and
that term, but I hear it floating around. So yes, I don't forage, I don't wildcraft. Continue.
but being out in the woods, it gives you that connection of, just walking out in the woods, get the exercise, the fresh air. But what I learned in ketamine therapy is, a lot of people should do that, and I do that, but it doesn't help you with your interpersonal relationships, being by yourself out there. It's like I can't win, but I
Well, hold on. You're not supposed to just run off to the woods. You're supposed to go out in nature, get space, process, clarity, and then take it back to your life.
Yeah, it's like, again, you don't know what you don't know, but it came up in the therapy session and I was like, well, hell, going out in the woods is not helping me any in this regard. And I was like, okay. But by the end of doing the sessions, that last session, like I came through, I wasn't crying, like I woke, I got up and we're sitting there, they give you time to recover and you start talking about stuff. And I was like, all right, I came through unscathed. And then we started talking about stuff. And for whatever reason, like I had that, I don't know if you've ever experienced anybody passing away, but that news when you get it, like that punch in the gut, like that came across. And then all of a sudden, not under the influence, I'm starting to bawl. And I'm like, I guess that's the breakthrough of being able to do that without being under any kind of influence. And she was like, yeah, I think you're going to be okay.
Aw. Well, and that's
But
totally the case. Yeah. It shows you what's possible, and then you get to learn how to do it without it, right?
right. And I talked with my wife about it. And she's like, "Yeah, crying is a normal thing." And I was like, "Is it?" But as a guy growing up, you're not supposed to cry if you get hurt or, I coached youth sports and, I'd see those kids crying out there and for striking out. I'm like, you get to do that again. So get over it. But, kind of have to be empathetic and all that. Yeah, I'm still navigating through all of this. So I'm not saying I'm like cured.
No, and I appreciate your vulnerability. As a child in sports, striking out was a lot to deal with, okay?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not fun, but yeah.
Well, I always felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders every time I went up to bat, but I also had a parent that was very very spirited in the sports department. High expectations.
Oh yeah,
Um yeah, go ahead.
both my kids play sports and yeah, being a parent in youth sports it's insane. Like I mean, that unresolved whatever some of these parents have, like living through their kid or yeah,
Mm.
I mean, I've done it myself, but I've gotten better at it. Yeah, it's horrible when you're watching it through that lens of somebody else. And you're like, "Oh God."
Yeah, well, and you hit the nail on the head with, like, their unlived like, they're trying to vicariously live through the children. I had a parent that did that, and, yeah, kids' sports is it's a wild place to be.
Yeah, and then we talk about I talk about it with my kids about, the crying and all that. Like I get it. Like you are super competitive at a certain point and on your own you want to do well, great, hit a home run, whatever. And yeah, that sometimes I had to learn that that emotion might come out as crying. Like when you lose, you cry when you lose, you cry when you win, you cry when you get married, have a baby, not when you're mad or sad. That's like for me, that's reserved for crying when you're mad or sad, not when you're happy. Like I'm like pumped when I'm happy, like there's no crying.
Well, I think crying is there when it's there, like, we don't get to decide when we cry.
Right. Like I don't know that though. Like
Oh, okay, you're learning that.
yeah, like my being does not know that. So like yeah, like I talk with my wife. She's like, yeah, I do it on the way home from work, and I'm like, what? Yeah, like to me, it's a foreign
Mm,
thing.
yeah, I could see that.
So if anybody else, has anything they want to offer me,
Well, I hope my partner doesn't mind me sharing this, but he when we met, he'd gone like, the previous 20 years without crying. And it was like, I need to be a man and, work and do all these things I'm supposed to do. And crying is not what men are supposed to do. And so you bottle it up and you move on. You bottle it up and you move on. And that comes at a price and a consequence. And I know for him, like getting to open that channel back up has been really helpful, and I hope it's been really helpful for you to see like that is a release. That's our body trying to move and process things, and it's a gift. I mean, yeah, you don't want to be such a mess in public that you can't go 2 seconds without crying. There's an excess side of that too, but it's one of our bodily urges. It's up there with sneezing and urinating and, like all of the other, sweating that happens in our body. It's just another bodily function.
I will say that going through all this and talking about like what I've been exposed to or that what is the inner self healing. We talk about mental health and all that. There are things that they tell you, to sit in your feelings and it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. And one day I was just sitting there and I wasn't feeling great or whatever, and just kind of sit with it. And I was talking to my wife. I was like, "It's like crapping your pants and sitting in it. Like there's no good that comes out of that." And like I'm still getting used to, like I recognize, when I'm sad or depressed or whatever, and you can't snap out of it. It just kind of you have to go about your day or whatever, but it's still there. And it's,
Well, I think one thing that's really helped me, and this is going to get a little spiritual, is recognizing that we're not our emotions. And emotions are like waves and they come and they go. And if you just allow them to come and go, then they don't control you. So when you're feeling sad or depressed and, the depression might be another conversation because that might be a little deeper
oh
and
yeah,
but if the anger the emotions that come up like I'm really frustrated right now, I'm really whatever, if you let it just sit and be and you don't try to push it away and you don't try to change and you don't try to control it, the wave will pass is the idea. And
right.
so it's not about controlling the emotions, it's about being. And the spiritual piece of that is like we are not our emotions, we're not our thoughts, we're not our mind, like we are something that sits behind that. And so if we like take out our identification with the emotions and we create that space between them, we can let them, come and go like, oh, there I am, I'm sad, or oh, there I am, I'm angry, or there I am, I'm happy. And it just is in a really poetic way if we don't get like caught in it.
Yeah, like I agree. Like, it's one thing like to have that emotion be a part of like a reaction, but when you're just sitting there doing nothing, that's when, yeah,
Well, and
just
it goes against our upbringing of being productive and doing something about it, right?
right. Yeah, just when it comes up out of nowhere and kind of blindside you, you're kind of left like out in the open, like, what do I do with this? And, if you're sad, go do something cheerful, or if you're angry, go break something or whatever, that kind of, but
Yeah.
it's not always an option. And you just kind of have to, like you said, you got to let it pass. But man, when it's happening,
Well, I know.
yeah, I mean, and I'm sure like millions of people are like that, 'cause whenever you think like, why is this happening to me? You are not the only one.
No.
But then
No, we're not special.
when you find your tribe, you're like, oh yeah, me too. And then you're like happy about it, you know?
Yeah. Um, my partner was put on Ritalin as a kid, and it blunted his emotions, and I think that's part of him kind of blocking out that piece of his humanity for a bit, is just we put people and kids on these medications that literally blunt their emotions, not just the sad or the hard ones, but the good ones too, and people aren't getting to experience this full spectrum of life. And that's one thing, like I want to cry if I really let myself start thinking about just like what we're doing to people in just, I don't know, a quest for, oh, I could go off on 17 tangents about why we're doing it, but I think everything in our society trains people not to get in touch with their emotions.
Oh yeah, because, since we're talking about mental health, all those medications they don't deal with the root cause of whatever, why you're the way you are, but they do blunt whatever is physiologically going on inside that's causing that for you to just go away.
Mm.
And it's not like it makes you feel better. It's just it makes you not feel. And sometimes, that works for a little while, but I mean, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, again, it's surviving, it's not thriving. And I think it might make you easier to like deal with as a kid, or like, you're not as hyper or something, and so we do these things, but I think the cost is too deep, man.
Yeah. But,
Well, I want to know. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but, trying, mimosa or Albizzia. Yeah, I mean, it was a pleasurable experience. It wasn't like, I'll say my least favorite herb right now or plant is valerian root.
The
Smells
stinky
like,
sock one.
yeah, sorry.
It's it It smells. I even, like, double bag it, put it in a jar. Ooh, I had
Mm-mm,
some in my car for a while. I was traveling a lot, and, I use it with my dog. My whole car just smelled like stinky gym socks, and I was like, "This
mm-mm.
is not working."
And like, I know beets are good for you.
Yeah.
Tastes like dirt. I don't care what you do to them. You can cover them in sugar. It tastes like dirty sugar.
Okay, so the Albizia itself was pleasant to drink. So, other than the tiredness, you didn't feel any other effects from it?
No, I mean, it was good to drink. It didn't have a bad taste. The bark tasted like tea.
Yeah. Hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, the thing about herbalism and foraging is people, like we talk about, like our society and Western herbalism is so far behind because we don't know, what these plants are like. And like I said, I went to see a plant talk last night, and he kept referring everything to everything as like a legume or in the mint family. Like there were like five things, and I'm like, yeah, we're all familiar with that, but the different species have different flavors or a scent or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're just not willing to try all that.
Yeah. Well, an interesting thing on the mimosa bark, I have I make like a big batch of tea and I put it in the fridge, and my partner and I drink off it. And right now it's, some cooling herbs for the summer and some other stuff. And I threw the rest of my albizia in it, which it was a significant amount. And so like, yeah, I gave him the tea and I didn't tell him what was in it. And later that night, he's like, my brain, it's like processing things. Like I can feel things processing. And it's so funny because I didn't tell him what he was drinking. He just takes whatever I tell him to. So I thought I would just throw that in there. But I agree. The world of herbalism is really interesting because there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lack of consensus. It's a really hard field to navigate. It's not like foraging where it's like well, I can eat that or I can't eat that. It's a different beast. And some of it's, like, this herb's been used. We know it works. We know how it works. Valerian's one of those herbs, like pretty reliable as an herb. But what the real kicker is just people. People are so different, Like, I recommended this herb to you with knowing only so much about you. It wasn't like a super personalized recommendation, but like an herb that works for me doesn't work for you, just because while the world of plants is so vast and complex, like us as humans are so vast and complex.
Yeah, and if you even want to like flip it on its side, people are allergic to peanuts. That works on them, doesn't work on me because they taste great, and peanut butter, Reese's Pieces, all that stuff. Like
Hold on. There's no peanuts in Reese's Pieces.
the peanut butter, whatever they make it out of. But yeah, like, yeah, I mean, it works that way, has an effect on people. Not a desired effect, but yeah, yeah. So I get it. Everybody's different. You got, whatever you put in your body, that's what makes up you. So whatever you're eating, drinking, ingesting in general,
Yep.
there's some hereditary things, but yeah, for the most part, when people talk about being gluten free, it's because of what they're eating. You make changes to your diet and you might not have that weird gluten reaction or anything like that. But
Yeah.
that's another topic.
I fully agree. We are what we eat, right?
Yep.
Um, we're coming up on time, but I want to know, is there anything else you want to say about your experience with Albizia, your connections, or, your experience with ketamine, mental health, any of it?
You just kind of have to be open. And I think right now, in our country, we are going through a paradigm shift, like the herbalism and the foraging. Because I mean, as far as foraging, all the stories you hear about people eating the wrong mushroom, that means more people are doing the activity, and just getting out there and the kind of bucking the system and the awakening, not in like a woke political correctness, but like kind of like fight the system activities that are going on in our day-to-day lives, like foraging and gardening and herbalism. Herbalism is to medicine is what growing a garden or foraging is to like the food system. And a lot more people are doing it because it's better for you. Eat more green
Yeah,
shit.
eat more green shit. I think people are getting fed up, and I think that there's definitely a drive and a push and a return to nature that's attempting to happen just in protest of how far off the rails we are going, which is great. And I think we need more people doing it. Yeah, I was gonna say something else on that, but I'll save that for another episode. But you brought up before the show one more connection you made about Albizia, and I want you to share it.
About what in particular?
Well, so we talk about Albizzia being the happiness spark.
Oh, why I think they call it that?
Well, yeah, you had a through line that I
Oh,
think.
okay, yeah. In when you brought up the topic of doing this experiment, I mean, I've seen the tree and all that, but I knew nothing about it. So, doing my half-assed due diligence, you look up stuff and you hear people talking about it and their experience with it. And a lot of people talk about, climbing the tree as a kid and the alien pink flowers that come with it. And, it's like fond memories that, just being a kid and being outside, and it's a happy time for them. And I kind of feel like not a placebo effect, but like, those memories of being happy, they make you feel good. There's obviously some endorphins released and all that. And yeah, everybody wants to feel good. So, but I don't think it's like the literal sense. And you talk about it a lot with, the allopathic medicine. It's not a literal happy tree. Like you don't take it and feel happy, but a lot of that synergy that goes with a lot of plant medicine.
Well, I take it and feel happy. But it's interesting because if being in the presence of the tree brings that happiness and that joy and the childhood memories and those feelings of just juberance, is that the word? Jubilant,
Jubilation.
happiness, jubilation.
Yeah.
um Like you could make the leap that when you are taking the bark of that tree, that energy is still with it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like that feeling translates into like a giant oak tree standing underneath the canopy, or standing next to a giant pine tree that's, 3 feet wide. If I lived out in California, I'd be standing next to a sequoia I've seen those pictures. People are standing there and it looks like it's a 3-story building, that the tree that they cut down. It's ridiculous. Like the things in nature that we don't know about because, we haven't been exposed to it or seen it like firsthand is insane. And then when you are able to see it, like the appreciation you have for what's around you, that makes you feel good. And also when you see the crap that goes on too, but it doesn't make you feel good, but you have to like appreciate, those sunny days and the breeze that comes through when it's like a million degrees outside. Yeah, like, the little things.
Definitely the little things. Well, Mo, I want to say thank you for joining me today and for indulging me in a little experiment. I hope that you remain open to herbalism and you explore and try it. I know for a fact it is a life-changing modality. And I definitely want to bring you back to talk about your foraging. We didn't even get into all your foraging or all those gorgeous mushroom pictures that you post on your social media and that outlet that you have that I think is really cool. And that's a blind spot I have. Like I don't forage medicine. I don't forage food. I'm interested in the craft, but like it's just not where my energy goes. So I think that you holding those skills that I don't have is very interesting.
Yeah, I was worried about like having enough to talk about today. We didn't even talk about like half the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Well, I'll have to bring you back, but you'll have to try another herb.
Okay, not valerian root.
Not not valerian root. That's fine. You know what? I don't even I hardly use valerian in practice because it's just I don't I don't want to take it. I don't want to make other people take it.
We'll have to find something that we both haven't tried yet.
That would be fun. That would be fun. I'd be open to that.
All right,
All right,
I'll come up with
we'll
it.
brainstorm. All right. That's fair. All right. I'm open.
All right, Lila,
All
thanks for
right.
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I apologize about the recording snafu. I think it'll
Oh,
piece together nicely though.
we got plenty.
All right, bye everybody.
All right.